Thanks for joining us on our streaming service for your first alert drought forecast. I'm meteorologist Callie Zanandri. New data released Thursday from the U.S. Drought Monitor shows that drought conditions are worsening across Colorado, driven by persistent heat and lack of meaningful rainfall. Exceptional drought, the highest level of drought, remains unchanged but still impacts just over 7% of the state, mainly in western Colorado. This includes nearly all of Garfield County and a large portion of Rio Blanco County, the same areas where some of the state's largest wildfires are currently burning. Meanwhile, drought jumped by over 8% this week and severe drought increased by about 2%. We also saw significant expansion of moderate drought and abnormally dry conditions, especially along the Front Range. But there is some good news on the horizon. Long-range forecast models are showing signs of relief with cooler than average temperatures and a chance for rain not only this weekend but into next week. Colorado State University researchers are tackling the West's growing water crisis. Their new paper outlines 6 key strategies for conserving water. Leading the charge are Huma Malik and Thomas Bork. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Kelly, for inviting us over.
This is fascinating. Let's get right into it. Your study emphasizes a real system-based approach to water conservation in agriculture. Can you break this down for us, and why is it more effective than focusing on just a single solution?
Yeah, great question, Callie. Our study that was published in Nature Water is focusing on taking a multifaceted approach to save water in order to secure food production in the country. Normally and historically, a lot of the water savings has been focused on using modern irrigation technology. However, the problem related to only focusing on modern irrigation technology is the fact that if you suddenly save water on a farm level and create more water, it does not necessarily lead to more water for downstream uses, because farmers would often just expand their land, grow more crops. So in addition to thinking about irrigation technology, we can also think about ways to optimize the way we manage the soil to increase the moisture content and also the crops that we put in the soil. Determine, that in certain areas, certain crops will be more, you'll be able to save more water. For example, alfalfa is a crop we use a lot for animal feed. It requires a lot of water. Using an alternative crop that uses less water would reduce the water demand a lot. We also are focusing on what can be done with respect to water treatment and reuse, and also issues related to the massive amount of water used to irrigate crops that are never being consumed.
One point that was really fascinating to me was that nearly 22% of U.S. water use goes towards producing food that's ultimately wasted. How significant is reducing food waste when it comes to improving water sustainability?
22%, just if we let it sink in for a second, it's nearly a quarter of all water use in the United States that goes to produce food that never gets eaten. Your food goes to trash. All the water used to grow that food is also wasted. And it's not just water, all the other inputs, every input like your land, energy, labor, all goes to waste. So cutting food waste can nearly put a huge dent into overall water demand in the United States. And it might be the fastest and most cost-effective way to save water, because in the United States, nearly 50% of all food waste comes from household. So households contributing to half of the whole food waste generated in the United States is a huge opportunity for an average person to help save water by cutting back at home. And it does not require new technologies or more investment. It's just a behavioral change and better systems. Just clean your plate, as your mom said, and use your leftovers.
I love that. So easy to do. Now, it's not just about what we throw away, but also what we choose to eat. And I found this also really fascinating. For producing a single pound of ground beef, it can require up to 1,800 gallons of water. Now, that's just a shocking statistic to me. Do you know how that number was calculated?
Yeah, isn't it mind-boggling? 1,800 gallons. So more than 95% of that goes to producing crops to feed animals, and then the rest is meat processing and drinking water for those animals.
Wow. And now, while individual choices might not solve the entire water crisis, how much of a difference can they make?
They can make a huge difference. Individual choices do matter. Being mindful of what you eat and how often you eat certain foods, it can make a huge difference. Plant-based food significantly require less water than growing animal-based food. And in the United States, we eat nearly 3 times more meat than the global average. So it's a huge opportunity here as well. And it does not mean that we need to cut it out completely, and we are not here to propagate a certain type of diet, and it might not even be practical, to be very honest, but it helps to being aware of how much water goes into producing your food for people to make informed choices at mealtime. And not even within the animal protein, we have choices. Like, as you said, ground beef takes 1,800 gallons of water, but then the chicken takes 500 gallons of water, which is significantly less than ground beef. So there are choices you can make within animal protein as well. Yeah.
Really interesting, and some easy changes people can make at home to help.
Yeah, one meal might not looks a lot, but when millions of people choose to shift away or certain portion of their diet, it can translate into billions of gallons of water.
Yeah. Now, Thomas, using treated wastewater for agricultural is already happening in some areas, but sometimes public perception and inconsistent regulations can remain a barrier to doing this. What would need to change to make this more of a widely accepted solution?
That's a great question. So when we talk about non-traditional water, it's basically all the water that's not fresh water, it's groundwater, water in your rivers. And some good example of non-traditional water would be agricultural runoff. It might be municipal wastewater that gets into a river. It could be produced water from oil and gas production. And I think the biggest barrier to reusing this water source is the fact that people often don't like the idea about putting produced water on the crops. And so what we can do to educate people is to explain that advanced treatment technology is actually able to totally remove all the contaminants in this wastewater and produce very, very clean water that's basically H2O molecules with a little bit of salt. And so by educating about what modern technology is already capable of doing, I think that will help convince people that there's no resemblance of that original water chemistry in the treated water, and that this water can very easily be used to grow crops, to be discharged into rivers, be potentially turned into drinking water for the cows that Huma was talking about before.
And they're doing this other places, right?
Yeah, indeed. I mean, if you look at areas like in the Middle East, you know, whether it's Saudi Arabia, Israel, they already treat municipal wastewater and directly use it for irrigation of croplands. Along the coast not Colorado, but California, you also have ocean desalination systems that can help provide some of the much needed water.
Well, so fascinating, and some small steps each of us can take to really help with this.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Tama and Huma, for being with us, and we will see you here next week for your First Alert Drought Report.